We're wrapping up Philippians this week. I've enjoyed it. We spent 8 weeks. We're going to do 9 weeks on a little book, but it is one of my favorites. And because it speaks to me about two things that it kind of encapsulates, I think, as I walk the Christian life, become more and more important. The idea of understanding how to live in joy regardless of circumstance, and how to know Christ and then be unified together. And some things that I think we lose. I think we see that we're splintered especially in the Western American church, in the church in America and the Western world, that we've kind of picked sides and we would rather argue than unify. Again, sometimes I think the attitude is, hey, I'll be glad to unify as soon as you admit you're wrong. Like, soon we can all agree, we can all be one big happy family. I'm just waiting for you to admit all your failures. And we don't want to. That's not the idea that Christ has here. That's not the idea that Paul's communicating. He's talking to a diverse group, a group up there in that church in Philippi that had leaders and military figures and men and women and people from different backgrounds who somehow at that moment and in that time were able to coalesce and serve Christ and serve the gospel and serve Paul and love each other and still have some differences. So I love that about who we are. I think that's one of the hallmarks of what Restore is trying to be. And I will admit, we all know that that's maybe not the way to have the biggest or most powerful church. And so I'm thankful for that, and we'll just kind of continue doing what Christ wants. The other piece that I love about it is that Paul is writing this letter to the Philippians, encouraging them, exhorting them a little bit, but really encouraging, saying you're doing great in where you are. There's a couple little things to work on, but I'm so encouraged by you, and I am living this joyful life. And by the way, I'm in jail with the possibility of my execution hanging over my head, and experience joy like I do. And the truth is, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, I'm not sure I want to experience that joy. I want joy that comes from everything working out for me all the time. That's the joy I would appreciate. But Paul is saying, no, that's not the point. And so this has meant a lot to me over the years, because I think one of the struggles we have as Christians is the hope and expectation of knowing Christ and of heaven and of deeper, better relationships and God caring for us, and then experiencing a reality of life that isn't always that, and sometimes deeply disappointing. And so that's why I think this is so powerful, that there's a call to, in the middle of those difficult times, when you've prayed, hard, and you've tried to live the way God wants you to, and things still don't work out. The business fails, or someone passes, or you become ill, or your kids are not living the way you would like them to live, or you have relationships that are fractured. Those huge things that we have to look and go, how is God still available? Is God still in my life? Do I still connect? And how can I experience joy? And this is Paul's answer to that. So today I just want to summarize. This whole series was called Knowing Joy. And the idea was, joy isn't something that we can just conjure up. It's not something we just hope for or that miraculously comes upon us. We have to know God in order to do that. There's a knowledge piece and an experiential joy piece. And so today I just want to sum it all up. We're going to look at just a few verses that we've looked at through this series and sum up the idea of knowing joy, to both those pieces. So the first point is know. We want to know. What are we supposed to know? First verse comes right at the beginning, Philippians 1:9. He says this, I pray that your love will overflow more and more, and that you will keep on growing in knowledge and understanding. Paul's first point here, his first idea, his first thing that he's saying is, look, there needs to be love. You've shown that there's love. Let's continue in that. That's the most concrete, visible understanding of that we are really following Christ, that we're connected with Jesus. And he says love, having this affection, this deep affection coupled with care and tangible help. How do we show that we really love somebody? We care for them. We care deeply, and then we find ways to express that, right? We know that in any relationship, whether it's family, whether that's a spouse, whether that's just someone, a friend, someone that we have a deep affection for, we want to see their good, their best. We want what's best for them and for them to experience the best, even sometimes if we're not experiencing the best. And we care for them deeply, and then we help when we can. There's tangible expression of that. And that love, he's like, I love this idea that it's going to overflow, because that's our common state of living, that we love people because we are loved by God. We are living people who are constant. Our first reaction is to love. It's very easy, especially in this day and age when we're reading news constantly in social media, and we know everybody's worst thought is expressed to everybody. So easy to have our first reaction to just about everything be negative. To immediately start thinking, why don't I like that? What's wrong with that? What's behind it? And as a Christian, as someone who's following Christ, someone who is loved by Christ, we're supposed to be people who our first response is love, thinking the best. Not self-protection, not denial, but love. And if that's how we are, then it's going to overflow. It's going to, not just will we feel loved, we'll begin to express that unconsciously and with our normal life, the love and care for people around us. And we can do that because we know and have confidence that we are loved by God. And so he's saying, look, you need to continue to have that be overflowing because you know Jesus. That's the key. He's like, you need to grow, and what you need to be growing in is knowledge and understanding. I love this idea that we are going to know Jesus. That is the key, a persistent and consistent connection with Jesus. Have you ever been somewhere where the internet, the Wi-Fi is bad? Where you're working along and suddenly it cuts out and you see that little thing spin? And then you figure, and then it comes back on just when you're about ready to shut it down, and it comes back on. There's nothing worse than a connection that continues to drop out. Or you're on the phone with somebody on your phone, and you call, and all of a sudden you realize you're talking to yourself for the last 10 minutes. That's very awkward. First of all, that makes me realize I need to shut up and listen once in a while. Listen for cues, right? It's really frustrating. But what do we need to do in those moments? When the Wi-Fi drops out or the call drops, do you just say, well, that's it, I'm never speaking to that person again, I guess it's over? No, we reconnect. I think it's important to understand that knowing Jesus means we continually reconnect. We make it a purposeful, we make it a logical, we make it a tangible, we make it a point of our living that when we realize we're distant, we try to reconnect. We pray, we study, we learn. Knowing leads to understanding beyond just facts, but to live the same way and understand as much as possible the motives and the desires of Jesus. To understand, we first learn about Jesus, and then we want to understand why he did what he did. And the beautiful part of it is Jesus tells us why he did what he did. Why did he come and sacrifice? Why did he come and teach? Why did he come and instruct? Because he wanted to free people and rescue us and love us. He wanted to connect, and he wanted people to be connected to each other. Right? We need to understand. Heard a great line about the difference between intelligence and wisdom, knowing and understanding. Guy said, and this is a British rugby player, so where I normally get my wisdom. Said,
did they win?
They did. I don't know about the British, but the guy's neck was bigger than his head, so I don't know what that said. But he said, intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And I think we need to learn about God. We need to learn about Jesus. We need to study. We need to be faithful in that. Read our Bibles. Understand. Get input from other people. Listen to podcasts. Read books. Look at articles. But at the same time, we need to understand what was Christ's motivation. Why is he doing what he's doing? Because he loves people, wanted to rescue us, and wanted to connect us to him and to each other. Understanding. Grow in our understanding. My only tip here on this, oftentimes, quantity time equals quality time. Sometimes we really want to have deep moments. We want to find a church, maybe. And I get it. People come through here all the time. Maybe they want to find some place where they feel a connection. Perfect, wonderful. God, let's see the kingdom grow, not just restore. Right? Go love him. And we find maybe there's a certain worship style or certain study style or a certain preaching style that helps us feel those moments. But if we're relying on just one time a week or one Sunday morning or one event to help us connect, then we've missed it. That's great quality time, but we need to have quantity time, meaning that every day we purposefully wake up and decide, today I'm going to connect with Jesus. When I feel anxious, I'm going to connect with Jesus. When I struggle, I'm going to connect with Jesus. When I'm joyful, when I'm experiencing happiness, when something comes through, I'm going to be thankful and connect with Jesus. We need to expand and grow in our knowledge and understanding of Christ. So we need to talk about him, we need to study him, we need to think about him. We're going to, at the end, do communion today, which is a celebration of a meal. And then after that, we're going to have a meal together. I love this idea that maybe one of the ways to think about it, this is not canon necessarily, but think about having a meal with Jesus. We had a series way back a couple years ago, Lunch with Jesus. All the times that he sat over a meal with different people. If you're struggling to connect and understand with Jesus, get rid of maybe some of the theology and doctrine that you're struggling with, or trying to find a special quiet time where you can Those are all good things. Please do them. But if you're really struggling, maybe one way to get over that is like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and have a cup of coffee and a cruller with Jesus and connect. Ask him, invite him, and see what happens in that moment. Next passage is Philippians 3:8. Yes, everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Jesus Christ, my Lord. For his sake, I have discarded everything else, counting it all as garbage, so that I could gain Christ. Philippians 3:8. Let me move this up there. I love this idea that we are content and sustained and fulfilled because we know Jesus. That is the number one thing in our life. That's what gives our life meaning. That gives us comfort. That's what gives us fulfillment. And all the stuff and all the accomplishment and all the status and all the power do not fill and satisfy the deep ache in our soul alone. All the stuff we run around trying to gain, comfort and security and wealth and importance and influence and even relationship, none of it can fulfill us the way our relationship with Christ does. That is the foundation and underpins all the rest of that. You hear that all the time from, sometimes those of us who are not millionaires feel that, get comfort from hearing that millionaires are some of the saddest people, right? And then I can go, well, I may not be a millionaire, but at least I'm not sad all the time, right? That they're unfulfilled. They get a little bit of power. What's the old Rockefeller line that how much is enough? Just a little bit more. That might be apocryphal, might not be true, but that's this quote, this thing we hear. And so understanding that the ache in our soul, the thing that's missing is not some other stuff, not another relationship with another person, not some more things, not some more influence, not some more significance, but it's Christ. All that other stuff is worthless compared to knowing Christ. And I'd throw in there especially our religious accomplishments. I never miss church. I serve all the time. I'm a really good person. I don't break any of the rules. Paul did all of those things. That's the context of this. Paul, I was the best religious person around by far, and it left me empty. And I have traded all of that just to know Jesus a little bit and the opportunity to know him better. That's what gives me joy. To know Jesus, we need to stop pursuing things that distract us and compete with knowing him. Not that we quit working or quit having friends or quit trying to gain wealth. All of that stuff is fine as long as underneath it and the upholding that is knowing Christ and a knowledge of Christ. Because some things can be good, bad, or neutral that are keeping us, become distractions from knowing God. I used to make a big list of all the things that we would say are bad. Lust and drugs and stealing, love of money, all that stuff that we say is easily bad. And then things that are good are things that are neutral, music or art or some of those sport. That's kind of neutral. All of those things can distract us from knowing God. And there are even some good things. How many people have been in huge fights, had their worlds rocked because they didn't want church to go the church didn't go the way they wanted to. I know of, one of the advantages, I had a little window into that. Sometimes my dad was a kind of overseer in the denomination for the Northwest region in his denomination. And so many times when he would have to go into churches and try and bring conflict resolution, started with the dumbest things. Who was in charge of the kitchen? Right? What chairs we were going to buy? Whether they liked the music the youth group was doing. And I'll throw this one in. That happened several times, that the music the youth group was doing caused a huge rift. And most of the people fighting about it were 50 plus. Here's the secret. Let the youth group listen to the music they want to listen to. You don't have to be there. In fact, you shouldn't. It's a little creepy if you're there. Right? But this idea that even good things can be distracting and keeping us away. Sometimes church can keep us from the purpose of knowing Christ. So what is the purpose? Knowing Christ. Third thing we need to work on knowing, not just getting rid of the stuff we thought was good and trade it for knowing Christ. The third verse I wanted to use is Philippians 3:10 and 11. I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. I want to suffer with him. I want to share in his death so that one way or another I get to experience the resurrection of the dead. I love this idea. He's saying, I want to know, I want to understand, I want to experience the life of Christ so much that I'm so part of him that it's almost like I died. I can experience what it was like for him to die and rise again. Not that I am Christ, but that I'm so connected. That's what Paul is saying. He's like, I know I'm going to be raised again. I'm going to experience the resurrection after I pass. I'm going to be raised to be with him, but I want to be so connected that even though it means suffering, even though it would mean death, that I can experience that power and that relationship. I can be so intertwined and connected with him. And again, the context here, this is right after he's listed all his earthly credentials and said they're trash and garbage. He's saying, but really would be amazing. You know what would be amazing is not leading the church, not leading the religion, not having influence over where the Hebrew Jewish church went, or religion went in Jerusalem, not winning all sorts of authority and money and power. So you know what would be amazing is to suffer a little bit. If that suffering meant I was experiencing Jesus in a new and better way. I'd trade all that reward, all that power, all that esteem, all that money. I would trade all of that just to know Jesus a little bit more. Even suffering for Christ is good. So a couple other things. There's some themes that we talked about, the themes of knowing that in the weeks we've been talking about. I love this idea. He wants us to know that we're all partners. He said that in almost every sermon, every section of this. He talks about how, hey, you're partners with me, talking to the Philippian people, the Philippian church. We are all in this thing of sharing the gospel together. We're all in this walk together. There's no, I'm an apostle, you're lesser. No, we're all in it together. We are working together. He talks a lot about the more we know, we need to understand. That's the point. And the way we know we're understanding is we love the people Jesus loved. Who did Jesus love? Everybody. Everybody. Jesus came to earth to die and rise again and forgive the sins of everybody. Now, some people don't accept that. Some people don't understand that. That's not our place to decide who's in and who's out. But we need to show that we love Jesus by emulating him, his actions, his example, and his teachings. So we want to do what is best. We want to do what is most loving for folks. Knowing the teachings and the writings of Jesus, about Jesus, of course. Knowing God through teaching an example of his heart, the heart of Jesus. Knowing what this situation and this culture and this part of the world needs and sharing Jesus, applying Jesus in that way. And in order to do that, we need to know people, not in the abstract. We don't need to know culture. We need to know people. We need to get to know people around us without an agenda. We're not selling Jesus like a multi-level marketing scheme. We're not trying to bring them in so we can put another notch. Just that we actually care and love for them, and we'll let Jesus bring them in. I think sometimes we see our mission and we lose people. How do we get to know people, by the way? What would be a good way to do that? It's a little rhetorical. Listen to them. Elicit from them. Don't talk at them and tell them all the truth. There's time for that. But when you have a better opportunity is when you've listened to people and know where they're at, and know where they're struggling, know where they need love, and we can love them. So we need to know God, understand and prove it by loving people. We need to know the truth about myself. We need to admit our weaknesses. We need to evaluate where we are, and we need to listen and grow in Christ and spend more time, realize when we're disconnected and reconnect. We need to understand that knowing and understanding takes time and consistency, that quantity time spent is quality time. And understand that knowing God and knowing about him will give us confidence and contentment, like we talked about last week, that we know he loves us, he's powerful enough to care for us, and we can be content with what he gives us in any circumstance. We're all in it together, and we need to walk the same way. But then that leads us to joy. That leads us to joy, part 2. So we know each other, we know ourselves, and most of all, we know Jesus. And then that process leads to joy. So many times we think and we put being right and knowing church and being a part of God's plan is we put that as a burden. Here's all the stuff now that you got to do, and here's all the stuff that you can't do, and this is the burden of being a part of God's family. You better get it right, or we're going to tell you how wrong you are. That's not what Jesus said. My burden is light. Doing all that, knowing Christ will bring joy. Philippians 2:17 and 18. But I will rejoice even if I lose my life, pouring it out like a liquid offering to God, just like your faithful servant is an offering to God. And I want all of you to share that joy. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share in your joy. He's saying, look, I am giving so much and caring so much that I feel like I'm being poured out. I'm losing myself in knowing Christ and in serving. And you know what? I want you to experience that unimaginable joy. And so how do you get there? You need to pour yourself out too. You need to pour yourself, be so connected with Jesus, so connected with his mission, that you are now poured out just like I am. And then you will begin to experience joy. True and consistent joy can be found only in knowing Jesus. A deep understanding of serving God by loving him with all that we are and loving the others, serving others, is what pours us out. It's our act of worship. It's our sacrifice. We can go into a whole big thing on the liquid offerings, the drink offerings that were added, but that is the idea of knowing Christ, that we pouring ourselves out. It's an additional part of a sacrifice of worship. And we serve him by loving him with all we are and loving the people that he loves. That's how we can experience God and the joy beyond any situation. And it's incomparable with earthly desires and earthly achievements. That's what kept Paul rejoicing. And he really wants the Philippian church, and he wants us to experience that joy. Philippians at the other end of the book, Philippians 4:4 says this, always be full of joy in the Lord. I'll say it again. Rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember that the Lord is coming soon. I love this idea that he's saying, hey, you can choose to rejoice by focusing on God. Now, I know in this series, I realized in the middle of it that I spent a lot of time talking about how to rejoice when things are bad. And it's important because I think we're confused sometimes with happiness or exuberance or contentment with joy. Sorry, that horse noise was fantastic. He's convicted. We need to experience joy also. Joy can just be good. One of the beautiful things is often Jesus, that we can experience joy because God is just helping our lives and caring for us, and we are allowed to be happy. We are allowed to be boisterous and experiencing joyfulness. And we can choose to that. We can choose to focus on joy and kickstart joy by focusing on Jesus rather than myself. How are those negative things so often so powerful? Because we're focused on how everything affects me and how I feel at this moment. And the reality is the way we can kickstart, or the way we can launch feeling joyful, even in a difficult situation or in a positive situation, is by experiencing joy. Is by focusing on God rather than myself, or focusing on serving. Have you ever been around somebody who, no matter how good things are, go, well, it's going to get worse, or this can't last, or like find some way to take some great moment and making it bad? You're on vacation and they're counting down the days till they got to go back to work. Right? That's me. By the way, I just need to say that. I struggle with that. That no matter how great things are, I can always find something that's going to be a problem. And I need to change. I've been working on that for the last 20 years. Right? We need to be able to embrace and enjoy the comfort of God, and the way we do that is by focusing on him and the goodness that he offers. It's not a fake, it's not denial of deep trouble or trial, but it is a deep understanding of God. If we really understand who he is, we will really be able to understand the joy that we can experience even in difficult situations, without denying, without pretending like, hey, everything's great. We can deeply experience difficult situations and deeply experience God in the middle of it. That he will care for us, that he loves us, that he provides for us, that he cares for us, that he rescues us, and that he wants us to be with him right where we are. That's the underpinning part. God wanted so much to connect with us that he sent his son, that he provided a way of rescue, because he wants to be with us. He wants us to be so connected with him that we understand and we live according to his pattern, that we understand the joy of serving and caring and passing that on to others and loving people. Just a few other things from the whole series. We can do that best by being unified. We are able to serve best and experience joy when we're experiencing it together It's hard to have a party by yourself. This would be a fantastic food and barbecue if we were just, as we're in here, if it was just me, but it's going to be way more fun with all of you. So we need to be unified in our mission and our understanding, even if we disagree on stuff. Even if we're not completely lined up on everything, we can still be unified because our focus is Christ. We can disagree on our sports teams that we cheer for. We can disagree on values even sometimes. We can disagree on politics. We can disagree on style. We can disagree on culture. But if we focus on Christ, we can experience unity and joy together. We understand that we are all changed by the same power of Jesus Christ that is continuing to work on us until he comes again. That we are all in a process. We have been changed, we're living changed, and we will continue to change. We are his masterpiece that will work on us until he comes again. And understanding that true righteousness is not from my effort, but from him. Some of the things that steal this joy are conflict. If you're having conflict with somebody, things that are inhibiting us from having conflict, make peace, reach out, talk to somebody, listen to them, forgive, and serve. Conflict robs us of peace. Conflict robs us of joy. Anxiety robs us of joy. Worry robs us of joy. And we talked last week, the amazing answer to that is pray. Bring it to God. Remember, he's already given you joy through so many things already. He's provided connection with himself. Pray to him. Bring everything before him. And be in that moment, as we pray, we can be confident that he will answer that prayer. And we can be content with the answer he provides. With whatever is causing us anxiety, whatever is causing us fear, whatever is causing us worry, turn it over to God. Sincerely pray. Reboot it over and over. Reconnect when we find ourselves disconnected by anxiety. And then trust that he loves us and he will answer, and trust the answer he gives us, that it is for the best. So that we can be just like Paul, content with lots or little. Lots or little money, lots or little stuff, lots or little relationship, lots or little health, lots or little security, lots or little success. All those things we want, we can be content because we know Christ loves us. I'll throw this out, just a little thought I had, and then we'll move on. That experiencing joy, that kind of joy from knowing Christ, then how can we experience that? I think it's okay to realize we can experience in difficult crisis times, but also in just little moments. Remind ourselves to be grateful and experience joy in little joyful moments. We don't always have to have unabounding fireworks joy. We can sometimes just have little peaceful, wonderful moments of joy. One of the ones I've enjoyed lately is sunsets. You guys know I'm colorblind, but a few years ago I got some of those colorblind glasses. And when there's a beautiful sunset, I run and grab them. And I'll admit, it brings me to tears. Now, I can only wear them for about 15 minutes because it starts to give me a headache. It's so overwhelming. And you guys maybe are bored with sunsets. You get to see them every day. But it's a powerful thing for me. I can experience a little bit of joy in that moment. It's not life-changing. It's not a huge crisis. But it's a wonderful moment. How about a fantastic meal with friends? In those moments, rather than going, when are we going to do this again? Or, man, I'm sorry we haven't done this before. Just to sit there and enjoy it. How about a great conversation? There's some people that when you talk to, you leave encouraged. Maybe we need to focus on being that kind of person. That when someone else talks to us, do they walk away going, man, I learned 9 different things they hate. Or, I was encouraged by life. Let's be people who can experience joy in just conversation with anybody. Experience joy knowing that I will have enough even when I don't see how I'll have enough. It's a difficult one. We can experience joy when we know that those who we love, who have passed, are with God. We can choose to think about what is good, what is pure, what is holy, what is admirable, what is honorable, what is right, what is worthy of praise. That will bring joy. Let's focus on that stuff. When we know God, we can find joy in him. We're going to do communion, and then we're going to watch a little video, and then we're going to eat. I think it's so appropriate that we experience, and one of the ways that we worship is through this communion. And we have these little cups. So you can kind of mess with opening them right now if you need to. Because Jesus really focused on that, where one of the ways he connected with people, they were sitting up on a hill and preaching and teaching them, but there was also, hey, we're going to sit together in your house and we're going to share a meal. Even when he had big crowds, you guys know this, one of my favorite stories is feeding 5,000 people with a couple of loaves or a little cheese stick, being able to divide it and give people what they need. So it's appropriate that this moment when he says here, this is what boils down what my purpose is I want you to remember who I am, to understand who I am, to understand my motive, to be able to follow my teachings and my example. We're going to remember that officially at a meal. Something that we're going to take something mundane and give it huge holy impact. To know and enjoy the love of Christ, of just having a simple meal with friends. But Jesus assigned great dignity to this moment. So we're going to take a moment to reflect as we do this on knowing God better. Let's recommit. Let's remove things that we're pursuing instead of Jesus. Repent of those things. Look at ourselves honestly and say, what am I pursuing instead of knowing God? What is keeping me from experiencing knowing God and then the joy that follows from that? What fears, what conflicts, what sins, what discussion. So let's just take a moment and reflect, and then we'll do this together. In another letter, Paul writes to the Corinthians church, talking about this communion or the Lord's Supper, or this ritual that they've decided that they're going to remember the purpose and understanding of Christ. In 1 Corinthians 11:23-26, he says, For I pass on to you what I received from the Lord himself, that on the night he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took some bread, and he gave thanks to God for it. Then he broke it into pieces, and he said, This is my body, which is given for you. So do this in remembrance of me. Let's do that today and take this together. In the same way, he took the cup of wine after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood. Do this in remembrance of me as often as you drink it. Let's do that together. For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are announcing the Lord's death until he comes again. I'll leave us with this. One of the things that I love, and think of this as me to you guys. Philippians 4:1. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stay true to the Lord. I love you and long to see you, dear friends, for you are my joy and the crown I receive for my work. May we be people who long to know God and love him and his people so much that we live in a deep state of joy through the reality of all of life's circumstances. Thank you so much.